What's something you thought everyone did until you found out they don't? Story 1. My father was a corpsman in the Vietnam War. When I cut myself badly, we would sit down at the table. He would get his kit, numb me up, and stitch the wound. When I got buckle fractures in my arm, he would take me to a friend of his practice, confirm with an x-ray, the position my arm, and put on a plaster case. The only time we had ever gone to the hospital was when my grandmother had a stroke and my grandfather had a heart attack. I thought hospitals were only for people who were about to die or almost died. In maybe 4th grade, a kid came in with stitches and was telling the story of going to the hospital. I couldn't believe that was something that almost eliminated him. I asked him why his dad didn't do it. Turns out I was the weird one. Story 2. Have nightmares regularly. We were playing a game that asked who most recently had a nightmare. I said, not me. I haven't had one since Thursday. I was 40 at the time. Story 3. Have intense deja vu to the point you disassociate from your surroundings. Turns out I have epilepsy. Answer. Ha ha ha, not laughing at you, but right after you said that, I was going to say I have frontal lobe focal epilepsy, and that's how I found out it's not regular dissociation. Until you said it yourself. God, I thought I used to be so gifted thinking I had a special ability because of how often the deja vus happen. Ha ha ha. Edit. Mistake, temporal not frontal. Mine are temporal lobe focal aware seizures. Too many words for this brain, sorry. Story 4. I thought everyone's head hurts after they cry. I was genuinely flabbergasted when I found out not everybody has the post-cry headache. Story 5. I thought touching the inside of the belly button was painful for everyone. Apparently for like half the people it feels fine. To me, it's incredible, unpleasant, and makes my bladder sting. Answer. The reason for this is that when you and everyone else were a fetus, your belly button was connected to your bladder by a tube called the urethra. After birth, this tube closes and becomes connective tissue. The connection is no longer a functioning tube, but your belly button and bladder are still connected by that ligament. The vagus nerve has a lot of branches near your belly button, so it could be something like that as well. Touching the inside of your belly button overstimulates a nerve. Story 6. The broken jukebox in my head constantly looping the same stanza thousands of times over days or weeks. Story 7. Hear a kind of narrator voice when reading. My sister reads fast, and I asked her, doesn't it bug her to hear the voice reading so fast? And she said, what voice? Answer. It's called subvocalization, and it's how most are taught to read. It's not wrong, but many people, myself included, find that if you train yourself off of it, you can read much faster. And what's more, it frees up all that space in your head that was used for repeating the words on the page. Now, when I read, it's like my mind is using that space for creating more vivid images of what I'm reading. It's more like watching my own movie being spontaneously created as my eyes scan words without repeating them in my head. It takes some getting used to and is more difficult the denser the material. ETA. I still see imagery while subvocalizing, but many find it's much more vivid and immersive without. ETA techniques in my comment below. Story 8. Had a good childhood. I thought everyone had a great childhood like I did, and then you grew and meet people and realize that so many people had terrible childhoods filled with trauma. It took me aback for sure when I started to realize that truth as a preteen. Answer. I was at a leadership camp in high school, and they had this activity near the end of the camp where everyone was supposed to pick a person living or dead that they wanted to talk to. I picked a comic author that I was really into at the time. I was near the end. Literally every other person had a dead relative or a strange parent or some traumatic person they wanted to talk to. I had a happy childhood and didn't know anyone I loved that had died or moved away or anything. Once they started, all these people were crying, telling their stories. I tried to think of something I could share, but I had no trauma or anything to share. After all these people were crying, I had to tell everyone about Calvin and Hobbes and how it would be cool to meet Bill Watterson. Story 9. Experience goosebumps from listening to music. Upon the realization that a lot of people simply never experience them, whereas I experience them very frequently, I used that knowledge to push myself to learn the guitar. Answer. I thought the same thing until I met my wife and was explaining it to her one day in the car. She had no clue what I was talking about. I'm like, you don't get that weird sensation that runs down the back of your head and floods into the rest of your body when certain parts of a song hit? No, she does not. Sucks to be her. More for me, I guess. Story 10. After waking up in the middle of the night, resume dreaming from where you left off and rewind fast forward until you find the moment you woke up. Or pause and replay your favorite moments of the dream while still dreaming. Answer. I can resume my dreaming, and I can tell myself I'm dreaming and then manipulate my dreams. I thought everyone could manipulate their dreams until recently when I found out that's not the case. It usually occurs when there's something happening I don't like in my dream. I just tell myself, you're dreaming, you can do what you want, and then I change it. Story 11. Sneezing in reaction to the sun or sudden bright light. My mom does this as well, so I thought it was typical. Then one day I mentioned to my partner, oh, like when the sun makes you sneeze, and they thought I was making something up to mess with them. I had to look it up for proof and realized it only affects something like 1 in 4 people. Story 12. I have an internal monologue, like a little mental narrator that talks in my head about what I'm doing or planning to do, like a narrator might do in movies. My thoughts occur as a running monologue of my own voice in my head. I didn't realize a lot of people don't think this way until I had a discussion with my wife and learned she thinks almost entirely in images sensations, like 4D movies without any narration at all. Answer: same. It trips me out how people think in images, how they clearly see something in their mind. You tell me to think of an apple and I immediately describe it in my head. Shape, size, color, texture, but I cannot visualize it. I try hard, and I barely conjure a blurry, short-lasting image. I guess this is how some people are super talented at drawing or painting. They just put on paper what they see in their mind. Amazing. Story 13. Hey, OP. 49-year-old married father of 2 here. Until I was about 45, I honestly thought that everyone constantly felt tearful, frightened, empty, and hopeless. I knew I did and assumed everyone else was just stronger or better at hiding it than me. On reflection, that sounds crazy. It really does. But my brain rationalized it at the time. It took a breakdown, therapy, medication, and most importantly, sobriety to realize that no, actually, the baseline human experience can be gentle contentment with a large reserve of resilience to deal with the stressors and confusion life throws around, which is where I am now. So yeah, to anyone reading this feeling anything other than calm, focused contentment, there is hope. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that gentle contentment is the default human setting? No one told me. I've been running on constant low-grade panic since 1998. Maybe I should check the manual. Story 14. Years ago, I was watching a movie where an actress put a bra on while she was getting dressed and clasped it in the back. I laughed, no one puts a bra on like that. The friend I was with replied, I do. I was under the impression that everyone puts their bras on backwards, or clasp and twist. It turns out, according to Google at least, more women clasp in the back. Story 15. I recently found out that a lot of people don't have a little movie playing in their head when they read a story. They describe reading as just comprehending words on a page. I feel a bit sad for them, though. Story 16. Have dreams that are so vivid that they alternate between feeling like real life or film-level quality that you can recount back in the morning in highly specific detail, and that you can wake up from and choose to resume the dream or select a specific part of the dream you want to revisit and pick up from there. My best friends have always known I have highly vivid dreams, but it wasn't until earlier this year when I mentioned the ability to resume the dream that they pointed out most people can't do that, which I found really surprising. Story 17. Have vivid dreams and the ability to clearly picture things in their mind that they've either never seen or don't exist, like when reading fantasy or fiction. Apparently, many people can't picture things at all when reading. Story 18. I just learned that people don't dream like they're watching a TV show. In my dreams, I'm not me. I'm in them sometimes, but I see myself like I'm on TV or I'm watching from a different point of view. I didn't realize in people's dreams, they were themselves in their dream. Story 19. Do people actually fill up their sink and use the water to wash their hands, face? I have always assumed the sink was always technically dirty unless you scrubbed it clean after every use like an OCD person. Story 20. Have different eyes see different images or angles and focus and unfocus at will. Turns out I have dysfunctional binocular vision. Took me 29 years to figure it out. Story 21. Having a big loving family. Big events together, meals together, met once a week at least. I'm talking grandma, aunts and uncles and cousins. To this day, I don't think I know a single person with that level of togetherness with their non-immediate family. Answer: I've met people who don't really know their godparents. Like their parents just picked some random people to be godparents when they were little. We were constantly over at my godparents' house when we were kids. My godmother helped my sister shop for her wedding dress, and my godfather interrogated her fiancé about what are your intentions towards my goddaughter. God love Uncle M. He has no filter. Story 22. Think before they do stuff. I'm constantly thinking with an internal monologue. I thought everyone had this. Story 23. When I was a teenager on the fast track to an eating disorder, I thought counting calories obsessively was something everyone did. It wasn't until I mentioned at a lunch with my girlfriends that I like the Costco tilapia fillets because they are only 100 calories and they looked at me like I was an alien, that I realized it was very not normal behavior. They looked so genuinely shocked and confused and concerned that it made me re-examine my relationship with food. Story 24. I thought everyone has a constant inner dialogue, or at least a partial one. Some people claim they don't. Story 25. Not believe in religion. As a kid, I thought adults were just pretending to believe in religious stuff just to make kids behave, like saying Santa won't bring you presents if you're naughty, and we kids were just pretending to believe in order to get along. I was well into my teens when I realized that the majority of people out there actually believe in religion. And when I went to college, I met people my age who were religious. That blew my mind. Story 26. Load the dishwasher correctly. My BF lives with roommates, 23 in age, all male. And when my BF opened the dishwasher, I literally got secondhand embarrassment. Whoever loaded it looked like they literally just threw in as many as they could, and majority were on their side and still dirty. Piled on top of each other, as many as they could fit. I said, I hope you didn't do that. And he said, I'm the only one who doesn't do that. He lives with 3 other men. Story 27. Cough when cleaning out their ears. I cough so hard to the point of almost puking anytime something touches the inside of my ear. I never understood the people who say they like cleaning their ears. It's uncomfortable, but now I know not everyone coughs. Story 28. The ability to detect when some electrical appliances are on in a room. I don't know why, but I can just tell sometimes, and it's always met with weird looks and constant testing. IDK, my dudes, I can just feel it in my brain and kind of my spine too. Answer. At least 2 possibilities. A, we have far more senses than we typically credit ourselves for. Among them is electromagnetism sensing. Not just the hair on my arm stood up before the lightning hit me, but actually recognizing when you are in a field. We all do this to a very minor extent. You may just do it more. B, hearing. Every electronic device creates noise when there is current in it, even when off. Most people cannot hear it. Perhaps you can. Story 29. Until I left my home in the Bible Belt at 19 for the military, I just assumed everyone had some kind of Christian church on literally every street in their hometown. Story 30. When I'm reading a book, I vividly imagine a movie scene type of thing about what I'm reading. I was in a book club with friends of 20 years, and I learned that I was only one doing that. I was so surprised. They didn't even know what I was talking about when I asked what a certain character looked like in their mind's eyes. Story 31. Sunder, definition noun. The realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own. When this phrase pops up online, I find it interesting that it is framed as a realization. I constantly think about the interior lives of passersby. Answer, I think about it on planes, like I'm flying over Cleveland, where I don't know a soul, and look down at the houses and think about all the people who right this second are eating lunch, or looking for their keys, or playing the guitar, or looking forward to a first date tonight. And all the networks of friends and family that they have. It's all real and alive and happening, and I may well never meet any of them. I can never decide if it is a good feeling, so much life and complexity, or a little sad, so much going on that I will never be part of. Story 32. Knew what they wanted to be later in life. I knew what I wanted to be since I was 7, 8 years old and always focused on that. Found out since I was 13 that a lot of people don't know what they wanted to become later. Now I am 25 and people around my age are still figuring it out, which is not a problem, of course. Story 33. I thought everyone fantasized wildly in liminal times, like driving long distances or waiting at the post office. The thing you do with your kid is daydream of space pirates, or being a mermaid, or the end of the world. I was in my 30s when I realized most people use that time to think about things like finances, or remodeling plans, or other tangible things. Story 34. I didn't think everyone did this, but in mornings, I'll get a terrible bout of nausea. It builds and builds to the point of feeling like yakking, but then I sneeze and the nausea immediately goes away. Anyone else? Story 35. I always have sneezed as soon as I chew, eat something mint flavored. My mom, my sister, and my grandmother also have this affliction, so naturally I assume that it happened to everyone. Me and my three closest bestie relatives all used to pop a piece of mint, gum, Tic Tac, candy cane, etc., and as soon as that mint taste creeped in, we each would automatically sneeze. Nobody ever questioned it because whoever was sneezing would just follow with, "I just had some mint," and we would all just nod and move on. It wasn't until I went to college that I learned that, no, this is not normal. Mint doesn't actually make everyone sneeze. Why didn't anyone ever tell me this sooner? I got a lot of very strange looks combined with tons of confused comments. I have no idea how I ever made friends. And yes, I still sneeze and I still eat mint. Story 36. When I read books, I have no picture of the characters whatsoever. I couldn't tell you what any of the people look like unless it's one of their defining and frequently described features, like Harry Potter's black hair. I found out other people visualize characters with deep levels of detail, and it weirds me out. For me, each character is a box with enough information to identify them. Name, personality, skills, done. Story 37. Drinking water regularly throughout the day. I assumed everyone did it without thinking, until I realized a lot of people barely drink any and only notice when they feel awful. Story 38. Having deep emotions to the point I would see two people laughing and instantly feel like crying because of how happy their happiness made me feel. Watching kids have fun, I'd cry. Seeing people say, "I balik ka na siya babigim," would instantly made me sad, etc. Turns out people are not like that, and my life is a constant roller coaster of emotions. Story 39. Hug their kids as much as I do. When a tragic event happens, I always hear, "Hug your kids tighter." I'm like, I hug them all the time. Are people not hugging their kids? Story 40. Epic family campouts with your cousins, second cousins, the aunts and uncles of the second cousins, basically all of my great-grandma's descendants. We'd all get a huge campground in some really beautiful place with good hiking trails and spend the weekend playing games and eating high-quality food. Being a kid, I just assumed my childhood is normal and that all my friends had similar campouts with their extended relatives at different times in the summer. I don't think I realized the whole thing wasn't common until my teenage years. I was shocked when I first heard that some kids never even go camping at all. Story 41. Lights have always looked a bit like stars to me, and I just never mentioned it because I could still see. Turns out that's astigmatism, and I only know that because my chemistry teacher in high school wore glasses, and he made an offhand comment about how lights look like stars to him because he had astigmatism. Story 42. I didn't realize most people dream regularly. I only remember 3 dreams I've had my entire life. Usually I fall asleep, and then I wake up in the morning not having any recall of a dream at all. Story 43. I thought pickle sweats were a universally human thing. Turns out it absolutely isn't. I mentioned it casually at lunch once and learned, through many awkward stares, that most people don't need a towel after eating a side of Clausens. Story 44. There are people who don't feel anxiety about everything. And I mean everything, from conversations to the way I walk, even the simplest actions, even when no one is watching. And if one day they have a single catastrophic thought, it can leave a person shaken because it's so unusual for them, while here I am having one every hour. Story 45. I'm realizing the opposite now. There are families that help their kids with college, go to their grade school plays, take them to the park, listen to their preferences. And when the kids grow up, parents who help with mortgages and pay for dinners out rather than just expecting their kids to pay for everything. I am way too old to be figuring this out just now. Story 46. Fall asleep immediately when laying their head down and closing their eyes. It doesn't matter where I am, what's going on, how rested or tired I am, what I've eaten or drank, what I'm thinking about, how comfortable I am, no matter the time. The moment I lay my head down and close my eyes, I am off to dreamland. In my bed, on a couch, on the floor, in a tent, with or without an air mattress, in a hotel, on a train, in a plane, in a hostel with my wife, surrounded by strangers, it doesn't matter. I can sleep anywhere. My wife disliked me for this. Story 47. I thought everyone had those dreams, where in real life you have to go pee, but in the dream you keep finding broken toilets and other reasons why you can't use the bathroom. The only other person I know who dreams this says it's sleep apnea. Story 48. I thought everyone kept a mental to-do list all the time. Turns out most people just go with the flow and realizing that made me see how much I overthink daily life. Story 49. Growing up, my mom had a brace for both wrists and a handful of other braces for various joints. We also had lots of ACE bandages, those elastic strips you wrap around an injured limb. As I grew up, I constantly had joint pain. I would take a step completely normally, and my ankle would go out of place suddenly and just be in pain for hours to weeks until it just sort of reset itself. My mom acted like it was the most normal thing ever, and my dad went along with it. I also ended up with braces for most of my major joints. When I was in college, someone had a sore wrist in class, and I mentioned that they should just sleep in their wrist brace because that helps me. They looked at me like I was nuts and asked what brace I was talking about. I said, "Don't you have a wrist brace for your wrists for when they hurt?" Apparently, normal people don't have joints that randomly dislocate themselves. About 4 years ago, I finally got diagnosed with hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and it explains so much. I'm positive my mom has it, and her mom did too. I'm also pretty sure my dad's side of the family also has it, which is why he also didn't question the joint issues my mom and I always had. The classic family inheritance, heirlooms, recipes, and joints that just slide out of place. It's like a surprise party your body throws, but the only guest is pain, and you're the one cleaning up. Story 50. As a child, I used to feel incredulous at even the idea that some people didn't feel worried all the time, like they were the ones with something off about them. Yes, it does turn out I was brewing up quite a sizable set of mental health issues. Story 51. Wipe sitting down. Why do some people stand? I don't get it. Your cheeks close, it would mush all the dirty stank between your crack more. Answer. I thought that for the longest time I wipe sitting, but I was told by a friend in a debate that he stands with his knees still bent like he's about to sit down and wipes just cause he fears his hand will hit the toilet water and or his junk while he wipes, so he stands. He doesn't stand straight up as you imagine. I still think it's weird, but it makes some sense, I guess. Story 52. I thought everyone's hands tingled, burned, and needed a few weeks to recover from mincing garlic. It turns out it's a genetic thing where some people are predisposed to being chemically burned by garlic. Story 53. Writing thank you cards by hand. My mother insisted on it for every gift, every kind gesture. I still have the little writing desk she used. Solid walnut, been in the family since the 60s. Now I'm the only one in my friend group who does it. People act surprised when they get actual mail that isn't a bill. Story 54. Constantly seeing static, after images, tinnitus, light sensitivity, etc. wasn't until I was 8-9 years old that I asked my parents if that's normal. Spoiler, it's not. It's visual snow syndrome. Story 55. So this was a recent one for me via TikTok. When I put dishes away, the newly clean ones go under the ones that hadn't been used yet. That way they all get used roughly the same amount, not using the same few over and over. Story 56. My wife of almost 25 years and I combined all of our assets from the day we got married. We have a joint bank account, and our house, our 2 cars, and all of our online, except for social media, accounts are in both of our names. I thought that's just what you did. It's our money. My wife has a couple of married friends who have separate accounts from their husbands. I make the house payments, he pays the bills, or something like that. I don't get it. Answer. Many people do this to prevent the possibility of financial harmful behavior. Women especially have to be careful and protect themselves. And some of us were warned by our mothers and grandmothers, either explicitly or by observation. Also, it hasn't been that long that we've been allowed to have bank accounts and credit cards in our own names. So many women don't want to give up that freedom. My husband and I joined accounts when we were married, and everything is in both of our names. But I understand why people keep things separate. Texas is a community property state in terms of divorce, but not all states are like that. Story 57. Recall a moment 10, 20, 30 years in the past. Something experienced, said, felt, that brings tears to our older eyes. Makes our chest tight, our throat fill with bile at the anxiety or regret, the shame or disgust at how we acted or what we did. Apparently, that's not a normal thing for everyone. Story 58. When I quit drinking, I was struck by how little my friends drank in normal social situations. I always had a drink, or multiple more often, if we were going to a sporting event, concert, at a restaurant, basically anytime I was out and about. They'd drink with me, but when I quit, it became really noticeable that I was the only one who seemed to care about drinking in the past. They'd still drink around me, and I made it clear I didn't need to be in a dry environment for myself to quit. It just really felt bad to realize how most people can have a restrained relationship to adult beverage. And I was the reason everyone felt they had to keep beer when I visited. Story 59. I foolishly thought everyone wanted everyone to be happy and healthy with a good education so they could excel in life. Story 60. Choose to read. I have a severe form of dyslexia. Some even claim it's something worse. Quite frankly, our symbols called letters suck. I basically see spaghetti. I have to decode every letter. Whether I start decoding is a choice, therefore choosing to read. Answer. About 30 years ago, I was a teacher's assistant for an adult basic education and GED classroom. I learned about the Erlen method, which I have witnessed work firsthand for some people. It's not magic and it won't work for everyone, but check it out. It involves using one or more layers of tinted films over text. It's not too expensive and has no risk or commitments. It might not help you, but it's worth trying. Story 61. Experiencing ASMR. Had my first experience when I was 7 and thought it was something that happened when you watch people concentrating really hard doing a task or when a friend plays with your hair. People looked at me weird when I said I got brain tingles sometimes. Story 62. Have kids at an early age. I'm from a small town where if you don't have a kid by 25, there's something wrong with you. At 27, I moved to Chicago. While getting to know my roommate, same age, I asked how many kids he had. He responded, "Why the fudge would? I have kids," which makes sense in a city that actually has stuff to do. I recently went back home and was at Boost Mobile. I heard 3 girls, none over 25, talk for a bit about their kids. I asked how many they had. Between the 3, there were 13 kids. Not a degree in sight. I was speechless. In this economy, shoot. Story 63. Clean the hotel room when you arrive. My parents both work in the industry and don't trust how things are cleaned, and I understand why. I thought it was a common thing until my friends looked at me oddly when I pulled my sheets out of my suitcase. Story 64. Wipe until it's white. Does that need an explanation? I thought everyone did this, and everyone was taught this. Guess not. Story 65. Replay conversations in my mind to see if I accidentally insulted or said something stupid to someone. Story 66. Hold on to their trash until they find the next trash can. I thought littering was a product of accidental lost trash for a very long time. Story 67. Believe in marriage till passing do us part. I thought everyone did until I learned the hard way that they don't. Story 68. Eat rice. I grew up in a country that eats rice every day, and I was shocked that other people did not in fact eat rice every day. Story 69. Flush the public toilet with their foot. I thought everyone who encountered one of those levers sticking out to the side toilets just kinda kicked it to flush rather than using hands. But I've actually found people are very split on this. If I can reach the flush lever with my foot, I am using it. Story 70. I can very vividly remember the color of things in my memories and dreams. My husband remembers things in dreams in black and white. I'm not sure which is more common. Story 71. I thought everyone's fingers bent backwards. Hips popped in and out of place, knees hyperextended, got dizzy, nauseated at nothing, random heart palpitations that feel like your heart is beating out of your chest, and just overall hypermobility. I'm now in my 30s and discovering I have HIDs along with a few other conditions that go hand in hand with that, such as POTS and dysautonomia. Story 72. A lot of people don't wash themselves properly, e.g., they don't scrub their legs clean when in the shower because the water runoff cleans it. Story 73. I thought everyone sneezed in bright sunshine, but apparently this is a genetic thing that only some people do. Because everyone in my family must have this gene, it never occurred to me growing up that it wasn't a universal response to the sun. Story 74. Having diplopia, aka double vision. It was so hard learning to read because I could not see the words on the page straight, and anytime I said anything, I was told everyone sees that way and that I wasn't trying hard enough. Eventually, I got vision therapy and prism glasses, but the damage was already done by then, and to this day, I still have to read with one eye closed. Story 75. Rehearse conversations in advance of having them. I thought it was normal to practice what you wanted to say, how you wanted to say it, think about possible responses, and how you would respond to them, but apparently not. Story 76. Deal with chronic pain. I was finally starting to catch on a little, and I asked my wife, not counting when you are injured, how many days a month would you say you are in pain? And expected a lower answer than my all of them. Instead, she replied, if I wasn't injured, why would I be in pain? Not many things have rendered me truly speechless in life, but that definitely did. Story 77. Stand up to wipe after a shoot. Wasn't until I met my wife that I realized some folks do it sitting down. Story 78. It's not something I do per se, but I thought that having debilitating joint pain all day, every day, and having your muscles and bones hurt when you lift weights was normal. I just thought I was a wimp, and bodybuilders must have very intense mental strength to handle the pain of lifting weights. My parents told me, growing up it was just growing pains, and even said that to me when I brought it up to them after having a conversation about how I will be turning 30 soon. They're gaslighting me. My whole life prevented me from going to the doctor about it, and I just lost health insurance, so I guess I'll never know what's wrong with me. Shout out to my roommate who mentioned he didn't remember the last time he had joint pain was, and helped me realize my parents are pieces of trash. Growing pains, they said. Sure, unless you're still growing at 30, then it's just your skeleton sending passive-aggressive postcards. Wish you weren't here. Sincerely, your niece. Story 79. Watch what they read or what people say like a TV. Turns out I have hyperphantasia, so I watch what I read like a movie in my head with vivid detail. Also, when people tell me stories or try to explain something, I watch it in my head. My husband studies astrophysics for fun and he'll talk about it, or, well, listen to Isaac Arthur or something, and I understand the concepts and science, but absolutely do not expect a conversational response from my end. I have no idea how to say what I just watched. But yes, I understand what you said about time dilation at the event horizon of a black hole. Story 80. I thought everyone had a mind's eye and could visualize things. We were visiting some ruins in Greece, and I could picture in my head what the town would have looked like in the past. I could imagine the sounds and smells. I was describing it to my son, and he had no idea what I was talking about. I have since asked other people, and many cannot visualize things in their mind. Story 81. I thought that everyone has it just as hard when it comes to dealing with stress, and that they were just acting tough. Then I got on anti-anxiety meds for the first time at 16, and realization that for some people this was normal. Really broke me. In a matter of minutes, I was just not giving a fudge, and obsessive negative thoughts were gone. For the first time in my life, I felt immediately 30 kilos lighter. Story 82. Actually learn and retain the knowledge they use to pass whatever classes or certifications they passed. Story 83. I thought when people said, imagine an apple or imagine your happy place, they just knew what they looked like, not that they actually saw them in their mind. That's how I found out I have aphantasia. I was 52 years old. The next year I was diagnosed WADHD. Story 84. Throw out cups that got moldy because you accidentally left it in your car. No amount of cleaning would actually make it clean. Stop wearing certain articles of clothing because the last time you did something bad happened. Turn around when you unexpectedly hit a bump on the road to make sure you didn't run over a baby. And a million other things. Turns out I have OCD. Story 85. Apply lotion on your entire body after a shower every time. Some of y'all really just dry off and go about your day unmoisturized. Story 86. By working a muscle in my jaw, well, my ear, but in that area, I can make a rumble sound in my ears. It's effectively closing them. I found out not too long ago that not everyone does this. Near Ent Centerlink. Story 87. I thought you had to wear your bra even to sleep at night. It wasn't until my college boyfriend pointed out that it was weird that I realized you can just not wear a bra when you go to bed. Story 88. I thought everyone had maids and went on vacations multiple times a year. Now that I live on my own, I ironically don't have maids, but cleaning does suck, and I'm mostly a staycation at home guy. Story 89. Keep peanut butter in the cupboard. I didn't know people kept it in the fridge until I started dating my current partner. Story 90. As someone from Southeast Asia, I thought it was weird how Europeans complain about the heat, LMAO, and then being weirdly defensive against Americans who experience more extreme heat cold about buying an air conditioning unit. Story 91. Putting raisins in brownies, not nuts. That's how my dad liked them, so that's how my mom made them. Story 92. Looking out the car window and imagining a little guy running alongside the car, jumping over power lines and rooftops. I thought it was just the standard passenger mode software installed in every human. Turns out some people just look at the trees. Story 93. Talking to themselves. I used to have verbal conversations with myself. I grew up as an only child and my parents were always working, so I never had anyone to talk to, so I would quite literally talk to myself, like playing with dolls. I grew out of it with time, but noticed lately I'm starting to do it again. I never thought it was odd because I genuinely believed everyone did it until I learned that it is odd and only a few do it well. Story 94. Wash their feet in the shower. Was almost 30 when I realized some people almost never wash their feet. I don't think this was ever something my parents ever had to specify. Like I'm in the shower and washing all of me, except sometimes skipping hair. Wild. Story 95. I thought everyone saw letters and numbers with colors in their head. I have synesthesia and only found out as an adult. Story 96. Looking inside the drawers and cabinets in the doctor's office while you are waiting for the doctor to come in. I was mostly just curious and a little bored. I thought everyone did this, and once it came up in conversation, I was immediately deemed a lifelong snoop. Story 97. I grew up thinking on my way calls were the norm. My dad called my mom every day before leaving work to coordinate dinner or last-minute groceries. It was a shock to realize that level of daily thoughtfulness isn't standard for everyone. Story 98. Saving money. Parents ingrained in my brother and I that we had to save money for college, retirement, housing, etc. Parents drove busted cars, we didn't go on trips. Everything was used until completely exasperated, etc. I thought this was the way of life, and that others being able to spend meant we were poor. Turns out we were fine, and I found out when I was applying for the military in hopes to contribute to tuition. After working my first job during the recession, none of my coworkers saved money for, well, anything. Even when I got a career going in six figures, I found that people still didn't consistently save money. It still baffles me the level of excuses that people make for why they can't save money at all income brackets. Story 99. Feel other people's emotions. I'm empathetic, so it's hard and exhausting for me to be around people. I really internalize pretty hard. It's not something I can easily control either. Kinda sucks, but I try to think of it in positive ways because it helps me understand people better. Story 100. Clean up after yourself. I currently live with two guys who never clean up after themselves, and it boggles my fudge mind. Never mind the fact that leaving messes everywhere is gross. It's fudge disrespectful to me and to themselves. Story 101. Growing up, I always thought it was normal to eat ketchup with fried chicken because my family and a bunch of my friends and their family did, but apparently it might be an Asian thing. Got fried chicken for lunch with my two Asian friends at work, and when we were looking for the ketchup in the lunchroom, all of our Caucasian coworkers gave us strange looks and said that it's not normal condiment for fried chicken long. Story 102. Having dreams. I have a dream almost every night, and there has been multiple people to tell me that they haven't had a dream in months, and I think that is so sad. Story 103. Celebrate Christmas on the 24th. I'm Hispanic. So growing up, we celebrated and opened presents on the 24th and then 25th. You just relaxed, ate leftovers, and played with your new gifts. So it was kind of shock as I got older when people said no, they do all that on the 25th. Story 104. Cared about food. Growing up, my family were really into food, trying new things, talking about whether what we were eating could be improved with more seasoning, buying new ingredients that turn up in the store. Even today, by 10 I'm thinking about what I might cook for dinner, whether I have a good wine to pair with the main course, etc. Then you meet people who just don't care, see food as fuel, don't like or want to try new things, would rather just eat a protein bar than a hot meal. It totally blows my mind. Story 105. I thought all boomers paid off their credit cards every month and were generally very careful about debt. I thought our Depression-era parents taught us not to live beyond our means. But when the housing crisis hit in 2007, I found out that people my age who I'd known for years had been using their home equity like an ATM and also putting European vacations and gambling on credit and just living so far above their means. It looked at them as just being bigger earners, they owned a business, than my husband and I. I'm still kind of shocked by this. My husband and I lived comfortably, but we're not big spenders because we didn't know how much we would have when we did retire. We both took some ribbing about being frugal from these friends over the years. Guess who was resentful when they went under? We're retired now, friendship is over, but in their view, it was as if WED pulled a fast one on them. Story 106. Assumed that one, all drivers were conscientious of other drivers' needs. Oh, the guy behind me needs to turn right at the light. Oh, move to the other lane. Oh, if I inch up a bit, the guy behind me can get in the left turn lane, etc. Apparently, few care about the guy-girl behind them while driving like I do. 2, in a group of friends, there's always one who is neglected, left out, or routinely made fun of. Turns out it's just me and I needed better friends. I'd see 3 girls hanging out and would try to see who the reject was. Took me a long time to realize that some friends were loving and supportive of each other. Mind blown. Also 3, I'm an introvert and just assume that people need quiet rooms to think and reflect and long periods of being alone. Couldn't understand the ones that needed constant noise, talking, parties to go to. It's why I have had such issues with friends and boyfriends and people in general. I'm not a big talker, and it wasn't until a third-party person called me a loner that I realized that I was. So you're telling me not everyone drives like they're in a cooperative multiplayer game? And friend groups aren't always secretly dystopian teen dramas? My entire worldview is a lie. Also, where's my quiet room? Story 107. I was having more and more tonsil stones, and they were getting bigger and getting stuck. I asked my husband, man, don't you dislike those little white things that come out of your throat and stink? He looked at me horrified and said he had no idea what I was talking about. That's when I looked them up and discovered what they were. He had his tonsils out as a child. I had to have mine out at 28. Story 108. Lying awake, not falling asleep right away. Apparently some people are out the second their head hits the pillow. Story 109. Growing up, the movies taught me that every guy interacts with their woman's feet. Massages, painting toenails, kissing, and foot worship. Turns out it's considered taboo to some, and most people think feet are disgusting no matter how beautiful they are. Story 110. I am demisexual, and for a while I thought that it was normal to not be attracted to somebody until you know them really well. Story 111. Shower every day. I really used to think everyone with access to clean running water showered every day. Maybe because I traveled and didn't have access to it for a while, so I took bucket showers. I thought everyone who could shower daily did so. Then I found out quite a few choose to shower far less often, like once a week. Story 112. Being toxic relationally. Ruined my first few relationships by modeling how I love some partners after how my parents love each other. Story 113. Sneeze when plucking their eyebrows, specifically the ones just above the bridge of your nose. Apparently this is because of stimulation of the trigeminal nerve and only affects about 20 of the population. Found out when I did it in front of my boyfriend, sneezed and said, "Sorry, just plucking my eyebrows." He was like, "What?" Story 114. I had no idea that apparently most people visualize music when they hear it. I was told by his music teacher that seeing pictures whilst listening to music was normal. The rest of the class agreed. I never do this and still have no idea if I'm an outlier or perfectly normal. I don't think a couple of dozen people is a big enough group for me to properly judge. Story 115. I always thought everyone had a secret stash of snacks hidden in their room. Turns out that was just me. Story 116. I thought everyone in the country watched the Mummers Parade on TV on New Year's Day. When I got to college, I was shocked to realize almost no one outside of the Philadelphia area even knows what mummers are. Story 117. Have an inner monologue. The fact that some people don't have a voice in their head narrating 247 is just wild to me. Story 118. I remember one time my husband woke me up and was like, "Hurry, come look out this window and see this awesome thing that I now can't recall." I hopped out of bed, made my way over, and told him to give me a second because my eyes were rebooting. He had no clue what I was talking about. So apparently not everyone loses their vision briefly when they first get out of bed. Story 119. I thought everyone got to places or appointments at least 30 minutes early to sit in their car until it was only 10-15 minutes early. I've never been late to anything, Lowell. Story 120. When I was little, I used to think everyone shoved the birthday person's face into their cake. You only make that mistake once. Story 121. Thought that if you said what you felt and upset someone, not being a male body part, just saying your feelings experience, then that was your fault and felt fully responsible for causing it. Thanks therapy for helping me realize this isn't normal. Story 122. Eat actual food. When I was young, I was completely shocked to learn how much junk food most people eat. Many people made fun of me in college for eating actual food versus tons of processed foods. Now, 30 years later, I've seen many laid low due to diet alone. Story 123. Get song lyrics profoundly wrong for years, only to finally read them and experience a true WTF moment. Concrete jungle where dreams are made of. I and many others heard as concrete jungle, wet dream, tomato. Story 124. I have had vivid maladaptive daydreams since elementary school, and to this day still play stories like a movie show with either myself or a made-up character interacting with whomever I'm crushing on. Not everyone does this, I guess. Story 125. One time, I thought it was common for fingers' toes to go numb when it was cold out. Apparently not. 2. Experience head tingles, or what is now referred to as ASMR. 3. Have your tongue naturally resting, touching the top of your mouth at all times. Didn't realize lots of people done until mewing became a trend. Story 126. Sing a second verse to the classic Happy Birthday song. My family has been doing it for generations, but it wasn't until I got older and started bringing partners to family functions and saw the confusion once the second verse started that I realized nobody else does that. Birthdays come but once a year just to bring you lots of cheer. Happy birthday. Name, dear. Happy birthday. Till next year. Story 120. Rinsing dishes before putting them in the dishwasher. I always give plates a quick rinse. Rinsing dishes before putting them in the dishwasher. I always give plates a quick rinse, but lots of people just scrape and load them straight in. But lots of people just scrape and load them straight in. Story 128. When I watch someone on TV or in a movie fall or bang themselves, I feel it. It makes my body tense. Story 129. Apparently not everyone washes their whole body. They just rely on the shampoo to rinse everything off. Story 130. Having a sum stuck in my head completely consumes my thoughts, to the point that I can't read because the song is blocking my focus. Story 131. Falling to sleep in less than 3 hours, had a sleepover with my bestie, and she could do it in less than 10 minutes. I was like, D.A. Fouquet, yeah. Turns out I'm not normal on that one. Story 132. Smell asparagus the first time I pee after eating asparagus. I did some research on this a few years ago and learned that pretty much everyone's pee smells like asparagus after eating asparagus. Whether you can smell it or not has to do with olfactory genes rather than how your pee smells. I think 60 of people have the genetic combo that causes them to perceive the smell. In my own very limited and a little awkward study, I've learned that my mom and I possess these genes and my brother and my dad do not. Story 133. My twin one, my dad was involved, adored us, and was an equal parent and partner. Apparently, according to the internet and in-person talks with folks, a lot of guys don't step up. My dad was the one who taught me at 16 he shouldn't have to make me a list because I was a member of the house and old enough to look around, see what needs done, and do it. My family was very conservative, and so gender roles were a thing, and often very annoying. But I think because my parents were both farm kids, they grew up with the mentality of do whatever needs done, which means even if you're a guy, if a meal needs cooked, you cook it, and if you're a woman and the hay needs to be baled, you do it. Story 134. Ear rumbling. My family thought something was wrong with me when I mentioned doing that thing where you make your ears make a sound like thunder, until we looked it up. Story 135. Spread butter on the bread when making a grilled cheese sandwich. Turns out many people spread mayonnaise or even use olive oil to brown the bread, huh? Story 136. Going through a weird state of mixed up thoughts that makes no sense in a muffled, distant way just a minute or two before falling asleep. When I was explaining to my wife, she was very shocked. Story 137. I thought everyone started having kids at 20 because that's what my parents did. I was horrified to hear that my peers' parents had their first kids around 28, 9, and sometimes 40. My parents absolutely did not need to have kids that young. They absolutely should have not been married to each other either. Story 138. I thought that everyone has a special landline phone calling code at home. My mom, brother, and I were not allowed to answer the phone. My father would call twice in quick succession, and only then could we answer the phone. I thought everyone's father took money from their bank accounts when they were teenagers. I thought everyone's parents told them to lie about what was going on at home. I thought everyone felt the need to walk around their home and leave no trace of themselves for others to find. I thought everyone thought that 13 years old is an adult. This one I found out last week, actually. Turns out I was just a parentified child. I thought everyone absolutely disliked their body. I still have a really hard time with money and what is considered a lot or reasonable in terms of finances. 100 seems like a massive sum of money to me. Poverty in childhood really changes you. Story 139. I thought everyone came from a dysfunctional home. Realizing that wasn't the case is also how I learned what a dysfunctional home actually was. Story 140. Taste colors. Not like full-on synesthesia or anything, but that certain tastes can only be described by a color, and then, as a result, certain colors trigger tastes in your brain when you see them. I was informed this isn't normal about 2 months ago. Story 141. While eating, I often get something like a hiccup, but it just isn't. If I do not hold it down, suppress it, I will definitely get the hiccups. In fact, I cannot remember the last time I have had the hiccups. It has been many, many, many years. Story 142. Pierogas. I always ate mine with salsa, cheese, and sour cream like a loaded baked potato. I didn't know that no one does that. Apparently people fry them or eat them with just butter. I couldn't wrap my head around that, as dumb as it sounds, but I went 22 years only knowing that one way. Story 143. Hiccup before the first sip of anything carbonated. I thought everyone did this, but apparently I'm the only person I've ever met that instantly has one hiccup before that first sip. It's only the first one, and I've only gotten the hiccups 4 or 5 times in my entire life. Story 144. See the calendar in shades and colors. I thought everyone did it until my husband and friends said, nope, you're weird. Story 145. Hear a faint CRT TV like ringing in their ears. Ever since I was little, I would think, I wonder why people can't have true silence. Turns out I was just born with tinnitus, LOL. Story 146. Not me, but when me and my girlfriend first got together with a group of friends, we were discussing food to make for all of us, 7 people. Someone suggested hamburgers and someone else chimed in with bacon, and my GF went, oh no, but then all our hair will smell like bacon. Turns out, whenever bacon or a lot of smoke is involved, her hair, her sister's and mom's hair, all start smelling exactly, and I mean exactly like bacon smoke, and not a little, like a lot. She was so dumbfounded everyone looked at her like she was crazy. We didn't believe it until we smelt it ourselves. Story 147. Someone posted about having epilepsy giving them strong deja vu and dissociation, and it reminded me of something that used to happen to me a lot, but not so anymore. I would be at the mall or the grocery store or whatever, and poof, suddenly I would become extremely aware, as if life was just a dream up to that point, and now suddenly I woke up and realized I'm alive. Everything around me is real. I hear people's voices. I feel myself breathe, and it all feels so weird. I trained myself to snap out of it quick, but the first couple of times were pretty intense, to the point that I felt like I would pass out. Story 148. I thought everyone's fingers tingled after chopping fresh garlic. I was talking on the phone one day with a friend while cooking for a potluck and mentioned how much I didn't want to make the food because it required a lot of garlic, and I didn't want to feel that painful burn that comes after and stays for a few hours. My friend was like, WTF, are you talking about? And my husband looked at me like I was crazy, and that's how I learned I have a mild allergy to garlic. Story 149. I thought everyone ate kiwi fruits like apples. Then I started talking more of fruit, and everyone had the opposite view. They thought everyone threw the skin. Side note, recently saw slices being sold in grocery store with skin, and I asked my friend, in this scenario, would you still peel them? Couldn't answer. Story 150. I assumed everyone had to have abdominal thrusts performed on them more than once, as a young child has dislodged a piece of candy they were chalking on. Happened to me at least 3 times that I remember. My dad was a RN. Story 151. I thought brain freeze was just a term. When I drink something cold, my throat gets very cold, but my head is fine. Story 152. That a couple of nights of broken sleep were incredibly debilitating and could lead to migraines bad enough to induce vomiting. Apparently, there are no other people in my life who experience this. Story 153. Self-reflect. Took me a while to realize that many don't even understand the concept of it. Kind of jealous way to live, though. Story 154. When I was a kid, I thought everyone had a granny and daddy and that their mom visited on weekends. My grandma and her husband, who I considered my dad because he was great at it, got custody of me at a year old because my mom was unfit. I confused everyone by going around saying my granny was married to my daddy. Story 155. Absent-mindedly repeat conversations I just had, IRL with another person in my head or out loud when alone, almost analyzing how I portrayed myself or my tone when I answered things. Story 156. Visual snow. It makes your field of vision look like static on an old TV, which changes based on lighting shade. It's funny, I have a vivid memory of being in kindergarten asking my mom about it, and she looked at me like I was crazy. I only realized as an adult that not everyone experiences it, like 2-3 of the population. Story 157. I thought everyone was closer to their families than their friends, like I was with mine. I guess that's because my parents always promoted a super tight-knit family, in some cases to a toxic degree. My mom would discourage hanging out with my friends too much because they'd all disappear if you were ever in trouble. Around grade 3, my friend told me she was much closer to her friends, which I was shocked by, and that conversation sparked a couple years of me asking others how they felt about their family versus their friends. Story 158. Have a visual calendar in their head. I was talking to my husband about this, and he said, "What are you talking about?" Well, I couldn't figure out how one can keep track of birthdays, etc., if you don't see them on the calendar in your head. I started asking everyone I knew. Apparently, I'm the weird one. I later learned it's called calendar synesthesia. Story 159. Have a deviated septum. I found out recently that I have one, and I figured everyone's nose just felt like that. Story 160. I think in pictures, not words. No verbal speech is going on in my mind when I think. If I want to order McDonald's, I see the process of taking my phone and ordering, but I do not verbally say this in my head. My colleagues were shocked when I told them. Later on, I have read that people think either visually or verbally. Story 161. Have to sleep until 4 in the afternoon, not want to, but like have to, because the first 8 hours weren't enough and you need 12-16. Like you came home from school at 3:30 and were asleep by 5 and had to wake up for dinner more nights than not. Story 162. My parents are baby boomers. My dad is one of 9 and my mom is one of 8. I thought everybody had huge families like that. As a kid, I was talking to my neighbor about his Thanksgiving plans and was shocked to hear it was only 3 people. Story 163. A friend once said, "You know how you don't laugh out loud when you're alone?" And I was so confused that she thought that was normal. Story 164. I grew up in an Italian-American family in a heavily Italian-American small town. I didn't have a clue until college that it was not at all common to have some kind of pasta macaroni as a starter to your Thanksgiving Christmas Day meals. The same as well for New Year's Day, not to mention even having a big family meal that day. My grandma always did this. Antipasti for everyone to pick on while people arrived. A sit-down pasta course, usually either manicotti, lasagna, or stuffed shells. Then a full American-style meal with turkey and sides, though New Year's Day was a ham because the Christmas turkey had been so recent. And lastly, desserts and coffee and not eating for another 24 hours because you were so stuffed. Story 165. Take off shirts the way I do. I take off one sleeve, use the free arm to pull the bottom of the shirt over my head, then sort of slip out of the other arm. I have more control over the collar to avoid smearing makeup this way, but I didn't learn that method for that reason. It's just always what I've done. I saw a meme about how men versus women take off shirts where this wasn't either of them, and a YouTube video where someone mentioned this method as a hack for taking off t-shirts really fast and realized I was doing it weird. Now I'm a bit self-conscious whenever I take off a sweater in public. Story 166. Your skin hurting and becoming super sensitive to any touch when you have a fever. My mom had this like I do, so I assumed that was just how fevers felt until my husband had a fever, and I asked him how he was possibly wearing jeans and didn't the rough fabric hurt his skin. He looked at me like I was crazy. Apparently, he just felt normal sick but overheated. Story 167. I move my tongue slightly with the voice in my head when I'm reading or thinking, like I'm trying to form the words. It's very slight. But the really odd thing is that if I hold my tongue still, the voice in my head sounds like they're holding their tongue still too and having a hard time talking. Story 168. Getting goosebumps when too hot. Yes, I get them when I'm cold, but I've always also gotten them if, say, I'm sitting out in the sun on a hot sunny day. I thought everyone did until around high school. Story 169. Eating SpaghettiOs at room temperature, out of the can maple syrup on vanilla ice cream dumpster diving. Story 170. Having a parent that is 30 or more years older than you. My parents didn't want to get married till they finished college and didn't want kids until they were ready. They had me and my siblings when they in their 30s and always told me it was best to not have kids till your late 20s or early 30s, which I thought was obvious because why would you want to have kids when you're still in school? Well, until one day I was talking to my friends and one of them mentioned how their parents are in their 30s. And I said, wow, your mom had you as a teenager? That's insane. And they all looked at me like I was stupid and told me that was normal. Apparently, it's more common to have a kid as a teenager or in your early 20s than in your late 20s or 30s. Story 171. I once said to my husband, I love that when we go out to crowded public places like stores, the mall, museums, the beach, we never lose our kids. It's crazy to me that the longest I've ever lost track of kid is like 45 seconds. He looked at me and just point blank said, what? You're not supposed to lose your kids. I was in shock. I got separated from my family regularly. My dad was very loving and kind, but a complete space cadet, constantly fascinated with the world around him and lost me all the time. I got lost at a fireworks show when I was 5, in Harvard Square in Boston, when he took me to his school reunion at age 8, at a crowded beach when I was 11. Those are just some of the big ones that took about 30 minutes to resolve. More common instances were things like him stopping to read a sign at a museum and not telling me, so I would just keep walking, or a similar thing happening at a store. However, both Harvard Square and the beach required me to seek the help of a police officer. The cop at the beach interrogated him when we got reunited as if he was trying to abandon me, because when the officer tried to comfort me and reassure me that we would find him, I casually said, "I'm not scared. This happens all the time." Getting lost as a core childhood memory is a choice. "This happens all the time," said to a police officer, is truly iconic parenting. It's not losing your kid if you're just doing advanced hide and seek without telling them. Story 172. As a young child, I thought everyone got along to the point world peace was a reality and that no one aged, disagreed, and everything was right. I thought there were good and bad people. I thought I was good, biased, of course, and my sisters were bad. Everyone else was good besides them. As soon as I saw someone hurt someone, they got filed in the bad category. Just imagine the existential crises as I continued to realize life isn't all black and white. People's proximity to one another doesn't mean they truly know them or even like them, and that no one is all good or all bad. Even realizing that people got older, died of old age, and just weren't the same made me realize we don't have forever. It was all mind-shattering, soul-crushing, but all in all, very real, beautiful, and telling that life is meant to be lived and cherished. It took about a decade for me to truly grasp these concepts, even though I understood. Story 173. Have constant foot pain from walking. Turns out my feet bones were sort of positioned wrong, basically giving me lifelong pain from walking anywhere. The doctor told me, chronic means 6 months, right? When I explained it's been over 25 years of pain. Story 174. Put on their pants 2 legs at a time. When I was young and more flexible, I'd lie back on my bed and slip my pants on. Took me until I was an adult to understand the phrase, everyone puts their pants on 1 leg at a time. Story 175. I thought all the popular kids in middle school were popular because they'd read the right books that told them how to be cool. I spent hours and hours reading as many YA books as I could, looking for the secret book that everyone else had read, because then I'd be cool too. Turns out I'm autistic, LOL. Story 176. You know how after you complete a really boring and mundane task, you're filled with regret that you partied too hard that time instead of doing something fun? So you have to remind yourself that the task really needed doing. And then you have to reward yourself with something fun so that you feel okay again? That's not what everyone else feels. Some people can feel good about themselves for being responsible and doing a good job. Story 177. I thought we all heard the ringing, squelching, and swooshing in our ears. You all are missing out on the symphony in my head. Story 178. Mine would probably be, and I've had this since I was young, the ability to create almost a wind noise in my ears. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like I can block out noise if I don't want to listen to it or if I want to drown out a noise or someone talking. It started when I had an irrational fear of vampires when I was younger and would block out the noises. I'm not sure if everyone has this, but I've told my sister about it and she had no idea what I'm talking about. I don't know how to describe how to do it, I just do. And it kind of sounds like some sort of a whooshing noise. Story 179. I was once talking to my friend about watching some forensic show where people described a suspect to a sketch artist and going, I don't know how some people can do that. I don't think I could describe my own father's face to a sketch artist, thinking they'd relate to me. Turns out I'm the weird one, and most people don't recognize people they run into by their voice and body language. They can actually recognize their face immediately. I may have a bit of facial blindness. Story 180. Once I told my husband that I needed to sleep a little more to see how my dream would end. He looked at me as if I were insane. Apparently, he's not able to do that. Story 181. I thought everyone got burns in their mouth from sweet things or regularly got so exhausted they felt like puking Elmo. Nope. Story 182. I thought having friends was only for young people because my parents basically have none. I was pleasantly surprised learning my partner's parents have their own group of besties. Story 183. I found out that not everyone has a voice inside their head, and that not everyone thought in complete sentences. I have full-on conversations with myself inside my head. I thought this was the only way. That's the end of the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you're interested, I have a second channel. This is Vancher signing off. See you soon.